तो आज का जो टॉपिक है जो is to basically introduce what is miniature painting and in the context of Islamic art. To begin with, I would like to orient you to the idea that this is not an independent art form, and it is part of a combined sister skills which came together to form the art of the book. So prior to, say, the 15th century, when printmaking came into being and the technology of making books became a printing process as opposed to something that was made by hand, this art form evolved around the 11th, 12th century after the fall of the Abbasid Khilafat and the onset of the Mongols in the subcontinent and in Central Asia primarily. So, जब ये किताबें बन रही थी, we had ateliers, we had libraries, and it was a process in which knowledge was preserved in the form of a book. So in the first instant within the Islamic tradition, most of the knowledge that was transmitted was an oral tradition, and then at a later stage when paper making and other techniques of writing evolved, the need to preserve that knowledge for the future generations came into being, and the process of writing evolved, and most of the development in the art of writing within the Islamic tradition takes place from the 7th to the 11th, 12th centuries, और आपके पास बहुत सारी फरक scripts हैं, some of it which I can share with you. ये Kufic है on vellum with gold leaf, 9th century. This is also Kufic, but this is an ink, black ink, and I think both images show the power of the script. There's a great presence of the letter and the word on the page. And there's very little any other illumination or illustration that you can see to, further beautify the page. So the whole focus is actually on the letter itself and the word itself. Right. And there's a very powerful presence if you look at the image in front of you. So here is all about the power of the pen, the power of the stroke, the proportion and geometry of the letters. This is a later period, this is Eastern Kufic, and you see the elements of illustration, the illumination creeping in, and the beautification of the text. This is a Naqshi script that we are most familiar with even today. We have variations of it. Here is a page from the Shahnama of Ferdowsi, which is 14th century. This is during the Ilkhanid period, and you see here the creeping in of imagery within the text. So the text still dominates the page, but you have the use of imagery. Here you see that there is a lot of focus on the beautification of the borders of the text as well. So you've got illumination going on within the text, and you've got very, very bold and very interesting patterns which have been played out on each of these pages. This is the sort of dark green color, जिसके ऊपर इन्होंने gold का ये border दिया हुआ है, और दूसरी तरफ जो आप चीज़ देख रहे हैं is ebru or marbling. And this book, this particular manuscript is, I think, from the Met. Okay, here's another page, same manuscript. Each page seems to have been handled differently, but the inner text is of the same uniformity, and there is a uniformity in the style of the writing, but the illumination along with it keeps changing. This is another page. This is the cover, which is also part of this process, also designed by somebody. तो जैसे जिल्द मेकिंग जो थी वो भी किताब का हिस्सा थी. So you have all these elements where you have a team of artisans working, producing the paper, producing the colors, producing the inks, producing the calligraphers who were doing the writing. You had the illuminators who did all the borders. You had the illustrators who made the visual images, and then you had the people who designed the hardcovers themselves, and then the whole thing of putting the book together. So in a lot of these books took years to make. They were not something that were churned out in a few months. So a project for a manuscript would take anything from 5 to 10 years and would involve anything from 50 to 100 people at work together. And these books were part of the courtly culture of that period. So whoever was the patron ruler of the time, he dominated the kind of manuscripts that were produced. His taste was very much the dominant fashion of that time, and these artisans were highly valued people. So every time there would be sort of change of power or there would be some invasions, the first thing that they did was they attacked the libraries and they sort of confiscated all the books and they would take all these skilled artisans with them wherever they went. This is Kitab Khana. This is a miniature of during, I think, Akbar's period, where you see the artisans at work. You see in the front page of this picture there is water flowing and there is a man standing sitting in black, and he is producing paper. And you've got all these people standing around who are obviously helpers. And inside the central ring of this picture, you see the work being done. You see somebody holding pages and somebody is writing, somebody is drawing, and there is a discussion going on. So this atelier is not simply just skilled workers. What we have here is exchange of knowledge. So primarily whatever was being illustrated in the terms of context of miniature painting, traditional art, was very heavily linked to a narrative, to a written text, which drove the imagery. And to be able to translate a written text into a visual language, you do require a very good understanding of the entire context of what you're looking at, and how are you going to translate it into a language of symbols. And this is an environment where you see that it was primarily about knowledge, and it was about exchange of knowledge, and the purpose of eventually looking at the image was also to be able to relate to what was written in the text. Not isolated something that was pleasing to the eye to look at, but also had something to convey of the deeper levels of meaning that the text had ahead. Here is a map showing some of the Persian cities that became centers of art, jisme the ones which are most famous are Herat, Shiraz, Isfahan, and Baghdad, of course, and later on Tehran, and you see Balkh, and you see Bukhara as well, so Samarkand. This was the areas where once the ateliers developed and the particular group of artists that were working there, there was a particular, what should I say, a style of painting that evolved under whoever was the supervising wazir or the ruler at that time. And today when we look back historically at these images, we either call them Hirati school or the Shirazi school or the Isfahani school. So it's a way of identifying in time and space where these pieces were produced. So within the context of the Islamic artistic tradition, how did this imagery evolve? Considering that it was considered blasphemy and it was not encouraged in the early centuries. And some of the earlier imagery was either astrological manuscripts like this one that I am showing you, or they were medical drawings. This particular page is from the Jami al-Tawarikh, Tabriz, 1314. It's a manuscript which is an historical document. And what you see here is imagery which is very, very Chinese. I mean, the form, the facial features, the clothing, the style of painting, the use of colors, very strong Chinese influence. So the Mongol invasions, when they came and they established themselves as the Ilkhanate dynasty and then eventually the Teimuris, they wanted to see images in books. So within the Islamic tradition, we had to create space to use imagery. And how was that space developed? Initially, we used influences which were visible like these, but as time progresses, you see the image completely transform, and I'd just like to go through 2 or 3 slides to show you how that happens. This is an image from the Dain Rustam slaying Shagat, again from the same manuscript, so you can see the similarity of the imagery and text page to page. And this is the same manuscript redone, and this image is the image done during sort of the parallel period, but 1335. And you see quite a dramatic change in the way the material, the form, the story has been played out. I mean, Rustam has been on a horse which has fallen into a pit. So you see this pit very clearly in the early image where the horse is lying down. But in the next image, you see a much more morbid death taking place. So, I mean, the whole tools of visual imagery have been employed in a more dramatic fashion. You see the animal with spears poked through it and it's bleeding. And you see this process of dying that is taking place. And he has leapt out of there and he's pulled an arrow from the backpack and he's about to shoot his brother who is behind the tree. So there's a trip triple death taking place. The whole mood of the picture is more morbid and much more dramatic in conveying the atmosphere of what was going on and relating what the words would describe in terms of the text, as opposed to the earlier image, which just sort of gives you an event, but it doesn't depict atmosphere or mood in quite the same way. So it's the same image. You have three deaths, you have the horse, two human beings, and you have the tree, and it's the same composition, but it is altered completely in the way it conveys mood, atmosphere, the handling of the color, the forms have changed. And this whole process carries on within the Persian tradition in Central Asia, and you see all the images becoming much more complex, and you see the images beginning to dominate the page in their own right. So here is an art form that takes root just in a tiny aspect of the page, and then starts to evolve into something more potent and powerful and takes over the page in itself. And you see far more complex imagery. I will show you some more. This is an image from the Matla Anwar of Amir Khusro Delvi, Safavid Qazvin, and this is a 16th century image. And you see a whole page, you see a mountain, so there's rocks that you give you the impression of something solid, but you can actually see what's going on inside the image.
Yeah, finished.
It's a much more crude rendering, so I mean, you're still looking at 1560, but it's not of the same quality as you're used to looking at. But you see inside the cave. So the image is basically a conceptual image as opposed to an actual image. So the rules of using visual elements is totally different to what would be the norms that most people are used to looking when you see a three-dimensional image on a two-dimensional page, and it's very real to look at. Here it is purely conceptual. So this is a psychic realm as opposed to a physical realm. So what we were talking about is how did they create space to create imagery within the Islamic Aniconistic tradition, was that the page or the form, that the rectangle, the inner rectangle, is to reflect your psychic realm. It does not reflect the physical material plane. That is why there are no rules in the same sense of drawing as you have in conventional drawing, but you can do whatever you want, wherever you want. You can color your trees whatever you like, you can place your birds where you want, you can have any size of human body. The human body is stylized, and you can do things visually which you wouldn't be able to do if you're using the rules of perspective. And there are other images similar to this one. This is from the thief discovered in the bed chamber from Kalila Vadinha ki document, और ये तब्रीज की drawing है, ये भी 1360 है. It's a little more complex in the sense that you have two-dimensional space. You have an inner space and an outer space. So you can see what's going on outside that room, and you have a view of the room. So you are seeing things parallel at the same plane of perspective. And you see the action that is going on inside the room. You have a woman who's woken up, and there is a stranger hiding under her bed, and there is somebody who has found that stranger, and there's a whole narrative that is linking action to what you are seeing. But what's interesting is that the scale of the tree, the blossom tree outside, does not relate to the scale of the building, and the flowers are in a totally different proportion to what is the scale of, say, the bed or the tile work or the doorway. And then you have this sense of the sky, and you see clouds as well. So you are made to, on one particular plane, see multiple perspectives all at the same time. This is something that's very particular to miniature painting. And another factor I'd like you to notice is that there is no use of shadow. And this is because when there is light being blocked by something that is on the material plane, then a shadow is created. Since these images are not of the material plane, they do not belong to the world that we live of time and space, there is no aspect of shadow. So these are celestial beings. So they, in traditional language, we would call them jisme latif. So there is no aspect of shadow. So the traditional artist will never use shadow to depict the presence of the material form. This is another image. This is the Shahnama of Ferdowsi, the manuscript, and this is Taimuri Herat, and now we moved into the 1430 period. And this is actually a very fine manuscript, but I do not have a very good image to show you how detailed the whole piece is. But you see use of color, you see a use of landscape, you see these animal forms which were being hunted, and this is from a story which is very highly narrative, and I'm sure, I don't know whether you all are aware of the Shahnama of Ferdowsi. I mean, it is something like 50,000 couplets, and it was, the poem narrates the history of the ancient kings of Iran and the mythical beginnings of the Arab conquest in 651 AD. It was completed around 1010 AD by Abul Qasim Ferdowsi Tusi, 935 to 1020, and was dedicated to the Ghaznavid ruler Mahmud of Ghazna. It's one of the most popular documents in the Islamic tradition, and you will find it cropping up in many periods, and so there will be many different manuscripts of this with different styles of painting done over under the tutelage of different rulers. And this is one from the Temuri period, and it's a more advanced period.
So when the Shahnama was originally developed, did it include paintings and illustrations?
Not at all, not at all. Most of the early manuscripts where the text is literary, and Shahnama is one of them, you do not have imagery. Most of the imagery comes into play post the Abbasid period, where the Mongol rulers wanted imagery. And here I'd like to add something that I found interesting, is that Chinese is a visual language, whereas the Arabic text is more of a sonorous language, and we infer meaning through sound. Whereas for them, visual imagery is a very big help in understanding or assimilating knowledge. So they felt the need for visual imagery within our manuscripts. So when they took over this period, they encouraged artists towards imagery, which is why the Muslim artist was very reluctant in the beginning. And what you see now is a development of a process that takes place over 200 or 300 years. So most of the finest pieces in Islamic traditional art will be found during this Timurid and later Safavid and then the Mughal periods, where this art form has sort of developed a repertoire of artists who are handing down the techniques and the grammar and the language, and who are basically very popular, and the idea of painting images within the manuscript has taken root. So if this is like 40,000 couplets and there's something like 700 or 800 pages, there would be 200 or 300 pages which are illustrated. And again, I would like to point out that a book of this caliber would take 5 to 8 years for it to be completed. So they are very, very valuable. This is another one from the Shahnama of Ferdowsi, and it's the Battle of Ruhun, the Paladin, and Bazur, the Sorcerer, and this is from Temuri Herat, 1440. So we moved on, and this is, I think, Shahnama Juki ke naam se. Muhammad Juki was the ruler, the Temuri ruler under which this was produced. So its style, its vocabulary, its color is very different to the one that you saw previously. This is again from the same Shahnama, but a different style, and this is Safavid Tabriz, and we moved into 1550 here. So this was done, I think, by Sultan Mahmud, the artist, and you see a whole different way in which, there is arrangement and composition of the shrubbery and the whole aspect of the jungle, Rustam in the sleep, and the horse is the one who is fighting with the lion. So there is a lot of symbolism here, and Rustam is that hero that everybody aspires to be, the perfect one who's forever fighting all kinds of tests and passing them and evolving in terms of his character.
It's unfinished. What does it mean?
Okay.
Probably.
I just took what I could find. Maybe will help me improve that later.
मेरा मतलब है कि वो golden लाइनें जो लगती हैं वो unfinished.
या वो इसी तरह तस्वीर मिली है मुझे. Rustam slaying the Shiat Dev. So this Dev is visible here. Again, we hear about such things, but in miniature painting, we see a lot of Devs, we see a lot of angels, we see a lot of sort of dwarfs, we see all kind of beings which one has heard of but one has not seen, but in this particular art form, they have been given a visual form. And you see an action where I think he has to take the liver of this white Dev, and he has to take it as a cure for something. So he has found him and he is now engaged in overcoming him. So you see a very interesting composition. There is a diagonal element to it. We are still inside the cave, and we can see what's happening. There's a whole action being played out. The tree is escaping outside the image of the inner square, and the movement of the clouds. And I mean, there is a sense of movement inside the cave, and there is a sense of movement outside the cave. So there's an atmosphere that's being created in this image. These are a little earlier, but I brought them in here because I think we wanted to look at some of the historical documents as well. So this is from the Zafarnama, and it was painted by one of the most famous artists of the miniature tradition, Kamaluddin Behzad. And what you see here is a battle. I mean, you have all the energy and activity of men, who are fighting with each other. So you have some stuff that's going on in the roof of the building. You have some that is going on at the entrance of the main door into the building, and you have movement all around it. And of course, the tree ever present. And you have a background. So you have a sense of space, and you have a sense of movement, and the whole focus of this composition is reflecting the energy of a battle. And I'd like to add here that Behzad was known for being able to use the figure in a way that he conveyed a lot through the variations in the posture and the expressions of people. And there's another one of his which I think I have here. This is the facing page to this particular image that you saw before. So now you've got the imagery dominating both pages in this particular manuscript. So you've got this movement of the troop and then the movement where the action is taking place. Okay, these are also two frontispieces of a manuscript. One is the construction of a mosque, Masjid-e-Jami in Samarkand, and this is also from the Zafarnama and the same artist. So you can see the palette is similar, the design is similar, but of course the activity is totally different. So you've got the elephant in the front with these men uploading sheets of something that are being put onto this cart. And you see movement all along as you look further up. You see carpenters at work, and you see the whole activity way back at the back of the picture where the construction is taking place. So again, there's a very wide expanse, and the perspective is a bird's eye view, and it's kind of in a way that you would not logically be able to relate to, but he had the ability to put together these compositions and create the atmosphere of what was going on at that time. So this is a historical event taking place, and he is depicting what was being done at that time to produce this building. This is an image which is placed juxtaposed next to that image that we saw. So they're like two front pieces. And you see the mosque at the back, you see activity around you, and there's a lot of energy of work going on. Okay, this is from Majnu at the Kaaba, Hamsa of Nizami, another document, Nizami Ganjvi, his 5 stories, and this is from the Laila Majnu Kahani, and he was so obsessed, and he had become so completely, what is the word? The term Majnu is where he loses himself in his desire for his beloved, and he's taken to the Kaaba, and he still comes back saying, Laila, Laila instead of Allah, Allah. So he didn't help in this journey, and it is documented in the form of this image. This is another document, same story, Majnu with the animals in the desert, and this is done during a different period, later period, and you see Majnu in the desert with all these animals. So he has forgotten who he is, he's forgotten himself, he's transcended himself, so to speak, in the state that he is, or the hal that he is. And he is at peace with the environment, and all the animals that are around him represented certain levels, certain attributes, and also the fact that he is able to have tamed the lion within him. So we see here, what are they called? Deer. The deer is intuition. The lion is the noble self and the ego. And we have birds in the background, which are the dervish, so the saints. And there's a very strong presence of the natural phenomena. You see the rocks, you see the water, you see the trees, you see this entire environment where it's him and that, and there is no other human being. This is another one from the same artist, Kamaluddin Behzad. And this is an image from the Mantiqal Tair of Fariduddin Attar. This is another document or another literary piece. And you see, Behzad had a very interesting way in which he is able to show you space. So you've got here two levels of visual perspective. One is the foreground in which this funeral is being brought, and there are those standing there to receive it. And then there is a wall and a doorway. And beyond the wall and the doorway, you can see the preparation of the grave. So you're seeing two sort of levels of perspective on the same eye level in one glance. And this is something that only miniature painting has been able to achieve, and Behzad was quite a master at it. This is celebration at the court of Sultan Hussain Mirza, whose court that Behzad belonged to. And this is the end of the Timouri period, and this is a Hirati court. And the manuscript is Bustan Sadi. And you see here is a beautiful interpretation. And again, look at the design. You see a doorway. And in the doorway, you can see what is on the roof of the doorway. You can see what is the man standing in the doorway. You see an action. You see the door open and space inviting you in. And then that entire space opens up into this terrace outside this house. So you see the house at the back as well. And you see a sort of a sloped garden that is leading up to the house. And you see this entire action that's taking place inside this terrace. And then you see, you know, the element of gold, which is the sky, and the trees, and all the fauna. So I mean, you've got all these elements juxtaposed next to each other without any logic, and they create a very interesting dynamic and lead the eye into the imagery and into the narrative that is taking place at the same time.